Title: The Gospel the Church Tried to Hide. For 2,000 years, we've been told a story, but what if it's not the whole time's story? What if the most crucial chapter was torn out, locked away for centuries, condemned as heresy? There was another version of events, a version that puts a woman right at the center of Jesus' inner circle. A version where the person who truly understood his message wasn't one of the 12 men we all know. This isn't just a different perspective. This is about a forbidden gospel, rediscovered in the sands of Egypt, that reveals Mary Magdalene was not a fallen woman. She was the apostle Jesus may have trusted most. And the story it tells was so revolutionary, they tried to erase it from history. Today, we're opening the book they tried to keep shut. Section 1. The rebranding of Mary Magdalene. To get why this hidden gospel is so important, you first have to understand the woman they tried to silence. In the Bible, Mary of Magdala is a major figure. She's not just someone's wife or daughter, she stands on her own. She financially supports Jesus' ministry, travels with him, and bravely stands at the foot of the cross when most of the male apostles had already fled. Crucially, she is the very first person to witness the resurrection. For this, later Christian tradition would give her a powerful honorary title, Apostle to the Apostles. Yet, nowhere in the Bible is she ever called a prostitute. So, where did that idea come from? It seems to have started with a single sermon in the year 591. Pope Gregory the Great gave a speech where he blended several women from the Gospels into one: Mary Magdalene, Mary of Bethany, and an unnamed sinful woman. He suggested the 7 demons cast out of her weren't illnesses, but the 7 deadly sins, explicitly branding her with a sexual past. And just like that, one of the most important figures in the early church got a demotion. Her authority as the first witness to Christianity's central miracle was buried under the manufactured image of a penitent sinner. Why? Well, at a time when the church was building a rigid male-only power structure, a strong, independent female leader was a problem. By recasting her as a repentant sinner, her role was made subordinate and safe. That false image stuck for nearly 1,400 years. The Catholic Church officially corrected the record in 1969 by separating her feast day from that of the penitent woman. But the damage was done, and her full rehabilitation as an apostle has been a much more recent development. Section 2. A discovery in the sand. While the official story was being cemented, another one was lying in wait, buried in the dry sands of Egypt. In 1896, a German scholar bought an ancient papyrus manuscript in Cairo. Though other Greek fragments of the text had already surfaced, this Berlin Codex contained the most complete version of a gospel lost for over 1,000 years, the Gospel of Mary. Sadly, the manuscript we have is incomplete. The first 6 pages are gone, and 4 more are missing from the middle. But what's left is explosive. The text, likely written in the 2nd century, picks up right after the resurrection. The disciples are terrified, grieving, and hiding. They're weeping, asking, if they did not spare him, how will they spare us? In this moment of despair, a leader steps forward. And it isn't Peter, it's Mary Magdalene. Section 3. The Secret Teachings. Mary doesn't share their fear. Instead, she stands up to comfort them, turning their hearts toward the good. It's obvious she has a strength and understanding the others just don't. This is when Peter says to her, "Sister, we know that the Savior loved you more than the rest of the women. Tell us the words of the Savior which you remember, which you know, but we do not." And here is where everything changes. Mary reveals a secret vision given to her by Jesus about the nature of reality itself. First, she explains that sin isn't a moral stain on the soul. Instead, the Savior taught her that sin is what happens when the soul gets tangled up with the material world and its passions. Salvation, then, isn't about being forgiven by an institution. It's about liberating the soul through knowledge or time's gnosis. Mary's vision then describes the soul's journey after death, where it has to confront a series of hostile powers that try to trap it. These aren't demons, but personifications of our own inner baggage: desire, ignorance, wrath. The soul can only pass them by gaining true self-knowledge. This was a radical idea, a direct, personal path to the divine, achieved through inner enlightenment, and this teaching was being delivered through a woman. Section 4. Peter versus Mary. After Mary finishes sharing this profound vision, the room isn't filled with awe, it's filled with doubt. First, Andrew speaks up, saying, "I at least do not believe that the Savior said this. For certainly these teachings are strange ideas." But the real challenge comes from Peter. He turns on Mary, not with questions, but with rage. Did he really speak privately with a woman and not openly to us? Are we to turn about and all listen to her? Did he prefer her to us? The accusation is dripping with jealousy. Peter cannot believe Jesus would give his deepest teachings to a woman instead of to him. This moment is more than just an argument. It's a symbolic clash between two types of Christianity. Mary represents a path of inner, mystical knowledge. Peter represents the path of external, hierarchical authority defined by position and, apparently, gender. This conflict may also reflect documented tensions and doctrinal debates between different Gnostic and Proto-Orthodox groups in the 2nd century. The text says Mary is crushed and begins to weep, but then another disciple, Levi, stands up for her. He scolds Peter, saying, "Peter, you have always been hot-tempered. If the Savior made her worthy, who are you indeed to reject her? Surely the Savior knows her very well. That is why he loved her more than us." In the Gnostic context of the Gospel, scholars generally agree that loved here signifies spiritual favor and understanding, not romantic love. Levi's statement is a definitive endorsement of Mary's authority. Chastened, the disciples then agree to go out and preach, but the battle lines had been drawn. Section 5. Why it was hidden. The clash between Mary and Peter gives us a snapshot of a much larger struggle in early Christianity. As the church began to organize itself in the 2nd and 3rd centuries, it moved toward a more rigid, patriarchal structure. Gnostic texts like the Gospel of Mary and others like the Gospel of Philip that calls Mary Jesus' companion were a direct threat to this rising structure. They promoted a spirituality where authority came from personal enlightenment, not a church institution. And they placed a woman in a position of supreme leadership. It's a common myth that the biblical canon was decided in one meeting at the Council of Nicaea in 325 CE. In reality, Nicaea was focused on other doctrinal issues, like the nature of Christ, and the formation of the Bible was a gradual process over centuries. But it was during this very era of consolidation that texts like the Gospel of Mary were pushed aside. They didn't fit the mold. They were labeled heresy, condemned, and excluded from the official collection of scriptures. While claims of a systematic campaign to burn every copy can't be proven, the result was the same. These alternative voices were effectively silenced. The story of Mary the enlightened leader was buried, while the story of Mary the repentant sinner was promoted in its place. Conclusion. The rediscovery of the Gospel of Mary brings up a huge question. What if Peter's version of Christianity wasn't the only one? What if Mary Magdalene's more mystical and inclusive vision had been the one to flourish? This forbidden text pulls Mary out of the shadows. It presents her not as a side character, but as a courageous leader who grasped the deepest teachings of her master. It reveals a powerful spiritual path that was intentionally buried, one that prized inner wisdom over institutional rules and recognized spiritual authority in a woman. The book is in fragments, but its message isn't. The story we've all been told is not the only one there is. So, what do you think? Was Mary Magdalene the true heir to Jesus' message? And what other truths might still be out there, waiting in the sand? Let me know your thoughts below.